and calling them toxic as if her fans, because KTV is a Caitlin Clark fan. She's my favorite basketball player to watch, male or female. Point blank, period. Now she's calling us toxic for saying the obvious about the sabotage that was going on in this league and how this woman has been targeted since before she even stepped foot in it, all while Stephanie White wants to ignore the facts of what the other players in this league have done, from disrespecting fans.
The head coach of the Indiana Fever, Stephanie White, just lit a match and dropped it directly into the heart of the WNBA's biggest, most passionate, and most controversial new fan base. In what was supposed to be a routine podcast appearance, White made a statement that sent shockwaves far beyond the basketball court. She spoke about wanting to, and I quote, change the toxicity around our league. Now, on its surface, that sounds like a noble goal. But the context and the deafening silence that surrounded other parts of the conversation revealed a far more targeted and problematic agenda.
Ignore the facts of what the other players in this league have done, from disrespecting fans, starting fake racial investigations, going on platform. I'm gonna give you the facts that Stephanie White wanted to leave out. This is nasty work. Welcome to Keep the Vision. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, share the channel, hit that bell notification, and hype the video. Let's get right into things on a Sunday. Let's get into it. So, we had this article here. Obviously, Stephanie White was recently on Sue Bird's podcast, where she
because to a massive portion of the audience, it wasn't a general plea for better behavior. It was a direct, unmistakable shot at the millions of fans who have been drawn to the WNBA for one reason, Caitlin Clark. This wasn't a casual remark. It was a catalyst for an explosion of outrage, with fans and analysts alike now vocally demanding Stephanie White's removal from her position. They argue that her comments represent the peak of a dangerous and dismissive attitude from within the league itself, an attitude that scapegoats the very people responsible for its record-breaking growth. But to understand why this moment is so explosive, you have to look at what led to it. The tension didn't appear overnight. It's been simmering for months, building through a series of deliberate choices, pointed silences, and glaring acts of disrespect that White and others seem consistently willing to overlook.
Now, you are ignoring the things that the players have done. These players have gone on. Arike Agumbawale was on ESPN during Caitlin Clark's rookie year, calling out fans saying, we don't want you. We had people like Ryan Howard go at a post-game podium and disrespect A'ja Wilson fans because they showed up and cheered for A'ja Wilson at an Atlanta Dream game that was a home game for the Atlanta Dream. And she gets mad that people are cheering for A'ja Wilson at an Atlanta Dream game. So now hard-working fans.
Before we get into this, if you're someone who believes in calling out hypocrisy and demanding accountability, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications on. What we're breaking down today isn't just about sports commentary. It's about a glaring double standard that could decide the future of an entire league. The foundation of this controversy was laid long before that podcast recording even started, woven into the very fabric of the Fever's season through a series of pointed remarks and strategic decisions. Observers point to a persistent, puzzling narrative pushed by Coach White herself throughout the season, one that seemed to deliberately avoid the obvious gravitational force that had entered her locker room. Despite the undeniable, quantifiable tsunami of attention, ticket sales, and television ratings that followed Caitlin Clark from college to pros, a phenomenon so vast it was dubbed the Clark effect by business analysts.
On a road game, but they also can't boo in opposing player coming into their arena. What can fans do? We've seen all types of fans be called racist. Black fans of Caitlin Clark, like myself, be called the raccoons. All types of stuff. These people come at the fans all the time. The players. You never address the things that these players have done to contribute to any negativity around the league. You never do that. It took Nafisa Collier getting taken up.
White repeatedly and publicly tried to shift the focus onto established team dynamics. She consistently emphasized that veteran guard Kelsey Mitchell was, in her view, the team's main priority and offensive engine, a sentiment she voiced in multiple press conferences, often when directly asked about Clark's integration. This created an immediate an obvious disconnect for anyone watching. Here was a generational talent, a player who single-handedly sold out arenas across the country from day one and became a household name, while her own coach seemed institutionally reluctant to fully acknowledge her as the central pillar of the franchise's present and future.
Paige Bueckers did too, but they don't need to be a part of the Caitlin Clark conversation. Caitlin Clark is the reason for the boom in the WNBA, point blank, period. It's not because of no Angel Reese. It's not because of no Paige Bueckers. They were some of the lowest. They had some of the lowest attendance for their games throughout the entire season. So I don't know why they keep trying to lump them in with Caitlin Clark. But whatever. It's hard to imagine the WNBA players would get vastly increased salaries they're going to receive as part of a ratified CBA, or at least their salaries wouldn't have increased to the same degree. Now, we know they wouldn't be asking for all this money if it wasn't for Caitlin.
To many, it felt less like a prudent basketball strategy aimed at managing egos and more like a deliberate downplaying of a cultural phenomenon that was becoming too big to control or contain. The suggestion from insiders and league analysts is that White was eventually pressured, reluctantly, into adjusting this narrative as Clark's on-court performance and off-court impact became impossible to rationalize away. But the initial sentiment had already taken root, creating an us versus her atmosphere that extended from the organization to a segment of the fan base. A divide was forming, not just in play calling on the court, but in the fundamental framing of the league's biggest star by her own organization, setting the stage for the explosive conflict to come.
About fans. The organization, there's been organizations such as the Indiana Fever who lied and hid injuries about Caitlin Clark the whole time, all while using her to sell tickets and saying she's game to game and day to day for months at a time. You don't think that contributed? See, you guys want to make this just about the fans, and I've watched all of these players go out and disrespect fans, all while trying to use the money and the fandom that Caitlin Clark has brought in to capitalize and to make money off of. What are we talking about here?
And that stark contrast brings us directly to the stunning hypocrisy at the core of this entire drama, a selective moral compass that has ignited rightful fury. When Stephanie White chose to deploy the word toxic, she aimed it squarely at the fan base, employing a broad brush that tarred millions. But in doing so, she conspicuously ignored and therefore implicitly endorsed a long list of genuinely toxic behaviors that have emanated from within the player ranks and the league itself over the past year. This selective outrage is what fans are now identifying as the real poison in the ecosystem, a willingness to condemn the reaction while giving a free pass to the initial provocative actions.
To go to a basketball game can't cheer for who they want to cheer for. So she's mad that she was disrespecting fans for cheering for A'ja Wilson, but in the same breath, we had Kalia Copper of the Phoenix Mercury get mad and call out fans for booing DeWanna Bonner, who left the Indiana Fever, who was on the opposing Phoenix Mercury team when they went to play in Indiana. So fans can't cheer for an A'ja Wilson on a road game, but they also can't boo in opposing player coming into their arena.
Let's talk concrete facts, the kind White's interview glaringly omitted. Early in Clark's rookie season, Riquna Williams of the Las Vegas Aces went on national television on ESPN's flagship programming and delivered a chilling message to new fans tuning in. Her words were clear, cold, and deliberate. "We don't want you." This wasn't a heated moment on the court caught in a heat of battle. This was a calculated, premeditated public dismissal of an entire wave of potential supporters during a segment about league growth, where it was a coordinated league condemnation of that specific toxicity. The silence from coaches and the Players Association was deafening, establishing a troubling precedent that certain forms of exclusion were permissible.
Oh, the fans are making this No. We are calling it like we see it. It's that simple. If you want to call out the toxicity, call out everything around the board. Call out the people that started fake racial investigate. Call out all of it. Don't just try to make it about Caitlin Clark fans. And this is why I believe Stephanie White needs to be fired. And I stand on that. Get down in the comments. Let me know what you think.
Then, compounding this dismissive attitude, there was a head-scratching incident involving A'ja Wilson and the Atlanta Dream. Ryan Howard, then a player for the Dream, used a post-game press conference platform not to discuss the game, but to openly disrespect and criticize fans who had the audacity to vigorously cheer for A'ja Wilson, a two-time MVP and the face of the league, at an Atlanta Dream home game. Let that sink in fully. Fans spent their hard-earned money, came out to support the league, chose to celebrate one of its most brilliant and accomplished players, and were publicly shamed for it by a player on the very home team they were supporting. This is a brazen violation of the basic, unwritten covenant between sports and its audience. The understanding that fan enthusiasm, within reason, is the lifeblood of the spectacle. Yet again, there was resonant silence from the very figures now lecturing the public about fan behavior, revealing a pattern where player conduct escapes scrutiny while fan expression becomes a punishable offense. The contradictory, unwritten rulebook for fans became even more absurd and impossible to follow with a separate situation involving Kalia Copper of the Phoenix Mercury. When former Fever fan favorite Erica Wheeler returned to Indianapolis with the Mercury, the home crowd did what sports crowds have done since the beginning of time as a rite of passage. They booed the opposing player, a former teammate, in competitive jest. Copper took public issue with this, calling out the Fever fans for their lack of respect. So let's get this straight. According to confusing and ever-changing guidelines seemingly enforced by certain WNBA players through the media, you cannot loudly cheer for a visiting superstar like Aya Wilson when she's on the road. And you also cannot boo a former player when she's on the opposing team in your own building. What exactly is the approved form of engagement? Are fans just meant to sit in silent, obedient reverence, offering only polite applause regardless of affiliation? This gatekeeping, this attempt to police the very authentic passion that fuels all sports culture, is a guaranteed recipe for resentment and disconnect. And critically, this messaging is originating from the players and figures within the league, not from the stands. But the ugliness, unfortunately, goes far beyond these simple, baffling rules of fan interaction. Black fans who have publicly supported Caitlin Clark have shared horrific stories of the vicious abuse they received from within the broader WNBA community itself. They've been labeled traitors to their race and targeted with dehumanizing racial slurs like raccoons simply for appreciating a white player's transcendent game, a form of bullying that seeks to dictate racial allegiance in sports fandom. This is a deeply insidious and dangerous form of toxicity, one rooted in identity politics and bitter exclusion. And it's a form that Stephanie White's broad, fan-focused critique completely fails to even acknowledge, let alone condemn. By focusing solely on fan reactions to on-court events, she implicitly excuses this vile, hateful behavior from within the professional ecosystem. The message this silence sends is corrosive. The players and associates can define the rigid boundaries of acceptable fandom through hostility and division, but fans themselves must never question, push back, or step outside those arbitrarily drawn lines. The double standard becomes even more visually infuriating when you move from words to actions, specifically the tangible, physical treatment of Caitlin Clark on the court during her rookie campaign. She finished her rookie season as the most flagrantly foul player in the entire WNBA, a statistical fact that underscores a narrative watched by millions. The game tape doesn't lie. Game after game, she was subjected to hard, often unpenalized contact that frequently went beyond competitive physicality and veered into the realm of targeted intimidation, with hip checks off the ball and hard takes down that were consistently upgraded upon league review. Fans watching at home and in arenas weren't imagining this trend. They were reacting to a visible, documented pattern of unequal enforcement and a stark contrast in how contact against her was judged versus contact against other stars. To then label those fans as toxic for pointing out this blatant discrepancy, for demanding fair and consistent officiating for the league's most valuable asset, is the ultimate form of gaslighting in a sports context. It tells a massive audience their eyes are lying to them, and that their legitimate concern for players' safety and equity is nothing but troublemaking, effectively shutting down valid discourse about the integrity of the game itself. And what about the role and responsibility of the organizations themselves in fostering distrust? The Indiana Fever, under the direct leadership of Stephanie White, engaged in a months-long, confusing saga regarding Caitlin Clark's health that systematically eroded trust at a fundamental level. For an extended period, the organization's injury reports were masterclasses in vagueness, often contradictory, and many argued, intentionally misleading. Clark was frequently listed as a cryptic game-time decision or day-to-day with undisclosed ailments, all while her image was being actively used in all promotional material to sell tickets and drive unprecedented viewership. The widespread perception, right or wrong, was that the team was obscuring the medical truth to keep their cash cow on the floor and maintain the financial momentum of her debut season. This kind of institutional opacity and perceived exploitation breeds deep cynicism and anger. It makes fans feel like they're being treated as walking wallets, not respected as invested stakeholders who care about the long-term health of the player they adore. Yet, this critical organizational behavior, a direct contributor to negative sentiment and speculation, was another glaring element conspicuously absent from White's one-sided critique of toxicity. All of this contextual turmoil leads directly to the billion-dollar elephant in the room that no one in authority wants to name plainly: the raw, transformative power of money. The WNBA is currently riding an unprecedented wave of financial growth and valuation increases not seen in its nearly 3-decade history. Television deals are being renegotiated at multiples of their past value. Corporate sponsorship money is flooding in from new sectors, and player salaries are finally set to jump dramatically with the next collective bargaining agreement, all fueled by a sudden, massive spike in relevance. Let's be unequivocally clear. This newfound leverage exists almost exclusively because of the vast, engaged, and commercially active audience Caitlin Clark organically brought with her from the collegiate level. The record-breaking rating spikes, the sold-out road games turning into cultural events, the historic jersey sales. They are directly and measurably tied to her name and her game. Many veteran players who spent years nobly grinding for recognition and better pay are now rightfully on the verge of receiving it, and they owe a significant, undeniable debt to the explosive popularity of a single rookie. This is an uncomfortable, perhaps inconvenient truth for some entrenched within the league's culture, but it is an inarguable economic truth nonetheless, backed by every available metric. This economic reality is the core of the cognitive dissonance that is now visibly tearing the league apart, creating a schism between the source of prosperity and its beneficiaries. Entities within the WNBA, teams marketing her aggressively, players enjoying larger crowds and brighter spotlights, and some coaches navigating new attention, are actively capitalizing on the economic boom Clark created, while simultaneously criticizing the character and motives of the very fan base she attracted. They desperately want the revenue, the spotlight, and the elevated platforms that come with mainstream appeal, but they seem to privately resent the source and the new demographic she represents, viewing them as interlopers. They are, in the view of millions, biting the hand that is not just feeding them, but serving a gourmet feast they've never seen before. It's an unsustainable and, from a public relations standpoint, frankly ungrateful position. Fans are not naive. They see the packed arenas on the road. They see the primetime network television slots, and they hear the constant talk of a new, prosperous economic era for the sport. To then be told by a foundational figure like Stephanie White that their passionate advocacy is part of a toxicity problem feels like a profound betrayal of that very partnership. It sends a chilling, clear message. Your money is welcome, but your voice, your criticism, and your perspective are not. So, what would it authentically mean to truly change the toxicity, as Stephanie White claims you want to do? A genuine, credible effort will require courageous accountability at every level of the sport, not just a convenient focus on one group. It would mean league and union leadership publicly calling out players who openly reject and alienate new fans, making it clear that such hostility is bad for business and the sport's growth. It would mean organizations committing to radical transparency about player health, protecting their athletes' long-term well-being over short-term ticket sales gains, even when it's difficult. It would mean formally acknowledging the unique and transformative impact of individual phenoms like Caitlin Clark without resorting to vague, collective credit that dishonestly dilutes her singular role in this specific boom. And yes, it would also mean encouraging fans to engage in good faith debate and avoid the tribalistic, personal attacks that can sometimes dominate toxic online spaces. But you cannot credibly demand that last part from an audience while willfully ignoring all the other provocations. You cannot plead for civility from one group while excusing outright hostility and exclusion from another. That isn't leadership. It's blatant favoritism. The escalating call for Stephanie White's termination is therefore about more than just punishing a head coach for a poor choice of words in a single interview. It has morphed into a public referendum on the future direction of the entire WNBA. This league now stands at a cultural and commercial crossroads, unlike any in its storied history, with two distinct paths forward. One path involves wholeheartedly embracing its new, diverse, and fiercely loyal audience, listening to their valid criticisms, respecting their financial and emotional investment, and proactively building a more inclusive, transparent, and fan-friendly culture from the inside out. The other path, more perilous, involves circling the wagons in defensiveness, blaming external fans for internal problems, and clinging to a divisive, outdated us versus a mentality that views new enthusiasts with suspicion. That second path is a dead end for growth. It risks alienating the very energy, the desirable demographics, and the colossal financial firepower that have finally brought women's basketball to the mainstream cultural threshold it has deserved for decades. In the final analysis, Stephanie White's comments didn't create the deep fissures in the WNBA landscape, but they acted like a seismic event that exposed them in the starkest possible light for the entire world to see. They forced every observer, from casual fans to league sponsors, to pick a side in a simmering conflict that has been brewing for months beneath the surface of record-breaking headlines. The furious, unified demand for meaningful consequences from a massive segment of the fan base is a powerful signal that cannot be ignored. It's the sound of a modern audience that is no longer content to be a passive consumer of product. They are active participants, stakeholders, and they are demanding a respectful seat at the table, not a derogatory label on their back. The league's institutional response to this defining moment will tell us everything we need to know about its capacity for self-reflection and growth. Will it choose evolution, or will it choose bitter grievance? The ball, as they say, is now firmly in their court. If this deep dive into the real story behind the WNBA's biggest controversy resonated with you, show this video some love. Drop a like, as it genuinely helps the channel reach more people who care about these discussions. And let's keep this crucial conversation going down in the comments. I read them all. Do you believe this is a true turning point for professional women's sports, or just another dramatic bump in a long road? Let me know your detailed take. And of course, for more unfiltered breakdowns of stories everyone's talking about, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. I'll see you in the next one.